Dan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. It's nice to be here.
Hey, so glad to have you. So, I wanted to ask you, what is seasonal depression?
Well, seasonal affective disorder is what the book is about. SAD, SAD, seasonal affective disorder, and then they also do call it seasonal depression, depending on what kind of, um, depending on where in the psychology they have different names for it. But then there's major depression, seasonal depression, blah blah blah. But we're going to focus on seasonal affective disorder, which is when the sun is not out during the winter time and people are affected and go into a depressive state. And so by lacking vitamin D, which is what the sun gives off, and when the sun touches your skin, that's when the vitamin D is created. And lack of vitamin D, it leads to depression and extra sleeping. If you can think of like a bear hibernating, they get extra sleep and or they oversleep, they overeat, and then they eat comfort foods, and that's kind of like how like a person who's depressed would deal with, like, that's kind of what you want to think about for somebody who's dealing with sad in the winter, although there also is summer sad, which we'll get into. 90% of the people that do have sad have it in the winter, and that's the most common one, but there is summer sad,
See, that's very
and I
interesting.
can
What,
elaborate if you want.
yeah, absolutely. How do people? Because obviously, what you're describing about the lack of the vitamins and the sun, it's like obviously in the summer, that's not mostly the issue there. So, what kind of transitions into people still dealing with it in that season?
Yeah, good thing. So it is different, and what it is more anxiety, and just instead of oversleeping, it's insomnia. So then there is possible violence because the people are not getting their sleep. And this happens more, like I said, 10%, but it's more in the hotter environments. So, and this happens, like I said, in the summer. My friend said he said it seems like everything that happened. A friend of mine is from India. He's like, wow, that seems like things that happen in India to him. And obviously it's a hot environment there. So, but I can't speak. I haven't been to India and I haven't had summer sad, so I can't speak to it as much as that. But I can definitely speak to winter sad.
Right, absolutely. So obviously the lack of the vitamins and the lack of the sun is something that most people are going through in the winter time. At what point does it become a disorder for somebody? At what point why are some of us affected super severely by that and then some others not as much?
Okay, so it's at its peak between January and February. My guess is because after winter, you don't, or after Christmas, you don't have anything to look forward to, like, but that's just me. Um, I've also seen that it said basically like the darker your skin, the harder it is for the sun to get in. So you can take that for what it's worth. Um, but yeah, I'm not really sure when it affects, but I mean, like I said, it affects between the fall and the winter at some point, and it affects differently people. That's what the main research was. That is, it affects different people at different times. So not everybody has the same effect.
Right. Yeah, see it's very interesting. So with a lot of us are not getting that sun and that time outside. Like obviously in the wintertime, most of us are isolating ourselves. And obviously with somebody with that disorder, it would obviously make that even worse. If I had to
Hmm.
guess. Like why are some people so severely affected by that situation with the winter and then some other people aren't? Like for example, like I'd say during the wintertime, like my mood levels and stuff are lower than, in summertime or nicer times out. At what point does somebody get severely affected by it and someone like me like isn't as affected by it? Is there like certain psychology and research behind it that kind of explains that?
You're asking some good questions. Um, I do know that certain people have, like I said, it happens for different people at different times. And then as far as like how they diagnose it, it has to happen the same time twice. So it has to happen consecutively for 2 years. and then they can diagnose it. But not all of them are, there's a lot of people that have it that are not diagnosed, mainly males, because, you and I both know no male wants to talk about a weakness. And so the women are way more, they're yeah, 3 out of 4 women are more affected by it than female or than males. But then I've also seen something that said like 8 out of 9 women are affected compared to men. Like, so it was really crazy. But yeah, I don't really know necessarily why certain people are affected by it. I mean, I have my degrees in education, not PhD, so I would love to tell you that, but I don't. Yeah, I would just say, just like they said, in all this research, that certain people just are affected, and not everybody has the same thing. Like some people may get, some people may deal with anxiety, some people may not. Like I know myself, I don't really deal with that much anxiety during the winter, or I mean, and I don't have the summer things. Basically, what you want to do either with either SADs is just try to keep a balanced when you know it's coming, because you do know it's coming. For myself, I know it's coming, and I make sure that I have my vitamins. I have vitamin D, and I have something called St. John's wort, which I've been taking for years. My mom kind of gave it to me when I was younger, which I found during my research that St. John's wort really doesn't do anything, but I think like as a placebo, maybe it does for kids.
What is it?
And it's just a vitamin that boosts your mood. It actually says on the bottle, like this just boosts your mood. Like it's just an enhancer. And but from what I found for like all the research, it didn't say that it does much. But then again, I also saw that the person who actually coined the term of seasonal affective disorder, Norman E. Rosenthal, back in 1985, he actually, has been looking into St. John's wort, and he believes that there might be some benefit to it. But I know I remember reading, and France was like, "Yeah, we're not believing this." And then I looked around, and there really wasn't much. I mean, there are benefits to there are treatments for seasonal affective disorder, but just um, not St. John's wort. So what I do, like I said, I know this is coming, and so I need to boost my happiness. So I get an extra dose because I know who I am and I know what I can do. But I don't recommend this because I'm not a doctor. Go to the doctor, figure out how much your dose would work for you. And so I kind of overdo it the very first time to get everything in my system, to get my vitamin D in my system, and to get my St. John's wort in my system, just kind of boost my happiness, and then go from there. The other thing you definitely want to do is get enough sleep. People that deal with SAD lose 2.4 or 2.5 hours of sleep compared to what everybody else does. And you're supposed to get 10 hours of sleep, so you can imagine. And then, yeah, so, and then obviously you definitely want to exercise and eat right, which, those are good for everything. But when you're exercising, you're creating those endorphins, and then you are getting rid of, like you said, you're getting rid of some of those stressors. And then that is making you possibly sleep because you're tired. But a lot of times, like when in the book that I wrote, I kind of talked about how Sam is kind of just doing nothing. And then because he does nothing during the day, he has trouble sleeping because he can't make himself tired. I hope I answered that. That was a long answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also, I want to touch on that. And you also brought that really interesting point up before of how, it's like some of those stats you gave, it's like those are only the people that are diagnosed with SAD, and then obviously any other mental illness or diagnosed concept in the world. There's so many people that are affected by the actual thing itself or just remnants of it that just simply aren't diagnosed of it, especially because people don't talk about it. Um,
Right.
and then, yeah, so you mentioned there in the book about Sam doing nothing and then not
Hmm.
being able to sleep. Has there been points in your experience where there were time periods where you kind of, fell short, or kind of, I don't want to use the word get lazy, but you felt unmotivated to do certain things, in your daily life, and then did that affect your personal situation with sleep or other areas of life or your mental health in general?
Okay, so first off, when I wrote the book, Sam is me, I am Sam. So all the things that happened to Sam have happened to me. Have I had lack of sleep? Yes. Have I had, used the light therapy, which we'll talk about in a minute or at some point? Have I used St. John's wort? Have I used vitamin D? Yes. Have I tried to, read or do anything I possibly can? Am I happier when I'm during the summer when I'm more with friends? All kinds of things. Have I pushed friends away, which is another big one that we don't really think about. Um, so yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff I do have. So you were talking about like, could you repeat that? I know, yeah, repeat what you said. I know you were talking about like, what's your personal experience, but I kind of went off a little bit. Sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, like your personal experience with feeling unmotivated to do certain things during the day, and then that could affect the sleep, and then also, your mental health or perception of yourself.
Sure. Okay. So as far as being unmotivated, seasonal affective disorder does that to you. It messes with your head. It tells you all the negative things you possibly can think of, and so you fight against your negative thoughts. And some of the negative thoughts are really dark. In fact, when I wrote the book, I was in a really dark place, the darkest and lowest place I've ever been. And through the book, I was able to get out of it. But yeah, if as long as you tell yourself these are only, and I even said that in the book, I'm like, this is not Sam talking, this is the sad talking. And if you listen to the sad, you're going to go down a dark road. If you listen to yourself and you're like, no, I don't want to agree with that, then you'll be better off. And so I know when I've gone through the sad, I don't listen to my thoughts at night. I don't I don't act upon my thoughts at night because my thoughts at night are telling me I'm no good. Why am I still here? You're gonna be a failure. Your family hates you. Your friends hate you. Blah blah blah. You're fake. All that kind of stuff. And then so to combat that, I found two things that I was really impressed with online. I found two phrases that stop those negative thoughts like that. And they are from Anthony Medver. And these two phrases are from like Sanskrit. And so if you have these negative thoughts, you say, what are my thoughts and how are they behaving? And when you say that, you're back to reality. That doesn't mean that the thoughts stop, because when I first did it, I had to do it like 20 times. I'm like, okay, well, I'm back in reality. And then the thoughts like come at me again. And then like, so I had to do it a couple of times or more. Um, and then the other thing is I saw a video by Hal Elrod, and he talked about how when he was a salesperson, his he got 5 minutes to just get it all out. And after those 5 minutes, he's back at it again. So there are two ways to think about this. There's the school of thought to stop the negative thoughts, or to deal with the negative thoughts and let them go. Like if you were doing a lot of meditation, you kind of just you look at the thoughts and they're like, okay, well, they're just going to be with me, and then you're going to let them go. There's other ones where you write them down and you analyze and like, what is the reason for this thought itself? And then when you analyze it, you find out that it is just a thought. It has no power.
Yeah, I love the way you phrase all of that, and I think the within that, the mistake we often make is that we believe that we are our thoughts. Of course, they're a part of us, they're a part of our brain and our human experience, but we're separate than the thoughts themselves, because just the mere fact that we can observe them means that it isn't us. Like, for example, when I look at this water bottle in front of me, it's outside of me. I'm observing it. If I can observe it, it's not, well, it depends what it is, but generally speaking, if you can observe it, it is not you, right? And so it's like there you can like make that separation of, okay, yes, the thoughts are coming in, they're negative, and they're about me very much. It's not me myself. And then also it's like so many of I'm not good enough, and what if this doesn't work out, or you're a bad person, or this and that. it's coming from something that's usually a lot more deep rooted, and it's also usually from the past. It's usually because, this person maybe one time, like, we don't remember it, but like 10 years ago someone used to say, you're not good enough all the time. And then now it's
Yep.
like there's a part of your brain that has locked that in the back, and whenever those dark moments come out for you, that's where they pop up and they're like, "Hey, I'm here." It's like, "You're not good enough." Right? And it's really interesting because that's where we often, get so trapped because we think it's a part of us. And this we the mistake we make is that we believe every thought that comes up in our mind. Whereas, like,
Yeah.
well, like you're saying, using those practices, whether it's meditation, journaling, analyzing your thoughts in whichever form you choose, or those two phrases like you came up with, like what works for you. It's like when you find whatever that is that works for you, and I mean it helps a ton because you're no longer plagued by the thought itself, and then along with that, what is usually the inability to deal with it at all, and now you're equipped with some sort of tool, some sort of method to be able to counteract it. And like you beautifully phrased it, bring yourself back to reality, because everything that's going up in your head, like, you think, I'm not good enough, I'm a failure, this and that, and then you look outside, whether you're in your room, you're out in public, you're anywhere, you're in nature. It's like, what out here in this moment proves that I'm not good enough, that I'm a bad person, etc., etc. Most of the time, it's nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know I'm trying to get into the speaking thing, like presentations and stuff. And one of the things that they talk about, and like everybody talks about, is that um, your negative thoughts are gonna you're different than your negative thoughts. Like you're going to have these negative thoughts, and you just have to deal with them, and it it's automatic. Like you can't get away from it. And so what they say is that anxiety and fear are the same thing. They're just in different spots. So with anxiety and fear, your heart level goes up, you breathe extra, all kinds of things. The only difference is anxiety deals with anxiety, or I'm sorry, anxiety and fear is kind of like is kind of together with excitement, and it's the opposite of like excitement. So what you do instead of going anxiety for like making a presentation or something like that, you just tell yourself, I'm excited, I'm excited, I'm excited, I'm excited. And you go through the same thoughts, but it's a different view of what it is. I know what you were talking about before, and you were talking about like looking at the water bottle. I went through a bad stage of my life, and I was looking at my life, and I was basically like, at one point, I was looking at, imagine like life, and looking at life in a snow globe and looking at that. And then I was ended up in a life I was where I was at some point, and I was trapped. And so I imagined myself in the snow globe looking out. And that was really bad because I could see what other people could see. But I imagine that's the way I just kind of described my life at a really trapped point in time, I guess you can say.
Yeah, yeah, and it's we put those mental barriers around ourselves, and it's like what you're saying, like that snow globe. It's like you're able to look out, but you're physically trapped in it. And then it's like,
Yeah.
in reality, there's a lot of things that we are in control of, but our brain sometimes gets to the point where you convince yourself that you're not in control, or that you can't do anything about it, and then obviously that then affects, the opportunities that you take in your life, and then the
Hmm.
changes that you do or don't make. What would you say with any sort of mental health conversation, or different diagnoses or disorders? There's always different perceptions and ideas and things that people think about when somebody says, I have this, or I'm dealing with this. What would you say are some misconceptions that people have about SAD?
And I do address that in the book because I had family members that were, and family members and friends, and think you can just get away with it. Like, why can't you just be happy? I'm happy. Why can't you just be happy? Because it's a chemical imbalance that I have. Well, if I have it, or if you have it, why doesn't, the rest of your siblings have it? Well, it does. It does move on through the generationally, but it only moves on through your parents and your siblings. So like it's not aunts and uncles and grandparents down the line. It's first generational. But as far as like that's a big one. And then the other one is like the worst part about um, is you push friends away. You push your friends and family away. And even during in the book, I talk about how he hated Christmas, and I still am not really too keen on Christmas. Um, there's a couple pictures that are my favorite, and but I'm just finding the picture of it. Can you see that?
Yes.
So there Sam is, and he's sad, and he just thinks about, he wishes he was somewhere else, and Christmas should be happy for him, but it's not. He doesn't look forward to it, even though uh, even though it should. There's lots of things you can do. You can go caroling. You can get cookies. All these things. You can dress the tree, wrap presents, go buy gifts, whatever it is. And the thing is, when you're doing all those things, that's great and all, but it's at night, and the night is the part that kills. That's the killer for seasonal affective disorder, because you have nothing to keep you busy anymore. As long as you're busy, you don't notice it, and that's kind of the same thing that they talk about with one of the treatments. So, in fact, I'll go on to some of the treatments. So, there's antidepressants, which obviously you have to talk to your doctor for. There's light therapy, which I kind of talked about. So, what you want to do is you want to sit in front of a special kind of light, and that light gives you what the sun would give you. So, it gives you 10,000 lux, which is about the same as what a cloudy, sunny day would be. Like, there's enough, and then if there's no clouds, it'd be like 50,000 lux. So somewhere between 10,000 lux and 50,000 lux is what you're looking for. And you stand, or you are in front of that for about 20 minutes, half an hour a day, just consecutively. And you're taking in what the sun would produce. So that is giving you the vitamin D and the rays that you need. Then there's CBT, or psychotherapy, which is basically telling your mind, yeah, but. So if you were going out, well, I can't go outside because it's snowing. Yeah, but you can make cookies with mom. Yeah, yeah, but I can't do anything. Well, you can go skiing, you can go sledding, you can go snowball fighting, you can do all this stuff you can't do, during the summer, or you can go out. Well, it's too cold. Well, you can warm up and you can get bundled up, and then you can go by a fire. You're not going to go by a fire during the summer. Yeah, but, and that's kind of the same thing. So you put those other options that are the opposite of what you would deal with, and that's kind of what that is. So, oh, and there's also the light therapy. There also is something that I have, which is a sunrise clock, which mimics the sunrise in your room. So no matter how dark it is, pitch dark it is outside, you're having the sun light up your room. So you're dealing with the sun as soon as you can. You're dealing with the light as soon as you get up. You're not just getting up in the pitch dark. And then there's vitamin D, of course, which we talked about. So you want to have your supplement of vitamin D. Again, talk to the doctor. So the reason that SAD exists is because the cause of it is because you're losing melatonin and you're losing serotonin. So serotonin is the one that's boosting your happiness levels and things like that, and that's what comes from the sun. And then there's melatonin, which is what you think about, like you can actually take melatonin to go to sleep. So if you have too much melatonin, which is when it's dark, you are going to want to sleep longer. So not only are you losing serotonin, which boosts you and gets you up and everything, it's double at the point in time during SAD. So you'd have double that. So you lack of serotonin and extra melatonin. So you're sleeping more. On the flip side of that, I learned something that, what was it? 40, when you start being 40, melatonin and serotonin decrease. So I'm guessing that's probably why the elderly don't sleep as long and can get up earlier. I'm just hypothesizing.
That would make a lot of sense. And
Yeah,
it's so interesting how there's so many different intricate areas of all of our lives that can severely affect us, and we don't know it. It's like somebody might not get enough sleep, and then they start to get enough sleep, and they felt like their whole life was going down the drain when it was really just their lack of sleep. And once they started to get that a little bit better, then the other areas of their life started to excel as well. And so I think for anybody who is in any situation that's more poor or not as optimal as they would mentally like it to be, it's like finding those, like you're saying with this condition, like those treatment methods and those optimizations of what you can control. Because it's like,
Mhm.
you could be like, yeah, there's no sun outside. And then like you said, like, yeah, but you could do this. And it's like there's so many things that we're in control of that we don't, not that we don't want to say we're in control of, but that we either aren't aware of or we think it might be too difficult because of the mental space that we're in at that point.
Mhm.
In terms of children, because is it morally, so obviously you're older. Were you diagnosed with it when you were a child?
Good question. You're not the first person to ask me that. So it it was coined in 1985, and I was never diagnosed with it. My mom just said, "Here, let's try some things." I've been if my bio has a lot of background that I've gone through. Uh, I was I was what is it? I had Jacksonian epilepsy, which means I had seizures from like up until I was junior high. Actually, I got out of it in like 10th grade. So, and I was born in a seizure. And then I'm also a product of the special education. So, through all that, I learned a lot of resilience and a lot of um, techniques that, you have to survival of the fittest. If you don't have techniques that work for you, you're not going to thrive. You're not going to survive at all. So, as far as seasonal affective disorder, same kind of thing. Well, I found something that worked for me, and the what is it called, the St. John's Wort. Whether it was a placebo or not, I mean, I still take it because it does boost my energy up a little bit. And then there's also vitamin D, which boosts my energy. As far as the four treatments, light therapy and psychotherapy are definitely the ones that they recommend. And those are the ones that have the best success rate.
I know you talk a lot about how it affects children, especially in the book that you created.
Yeah.
What are some of the best ways to communicate to children who are affected by this to really get them to start to thrive and optimize certain things in their life? Because obviously, it's easy to go to an adult, and say like, "Oh, just make these few changes, and like things could get a little better." And they're like, "Oh, okay," and then they try it. Obviously, kids can be a little bit more stubborn, or like, "That's not going to work," or like, "Go away," or whatever the case is. How have you, or two parts to this? First, how was your experience kind of getting into the realms of optimizing things in your life when you were younger, and then how do you communicate that to children to the best of your ability nowadays?
Okay. So there's only 3% of the population for children that deal with SAD. I looked up 30 different websites and nothing said anything about children as far as like when does it occur. And the belief is that there's so many other things that it could be at the time. And like I said, you have to have 2 years consecutively. So maybe if it's, they have this in fifth grade, so that's what, 11, and then they're 13, they have it 2 years, then all of a sudden they're entering their adolescence and it could be something else. And that's the thing, like as far as children are concerned. So there really isn't necessarily a diagnosis per se for children. I mean, there might be, but I didn't see any. I just saw that, a lot of the websites did talk about children and teens. Um, as far as children are concerned, like they go through, it's harder for them to go to sleep and kind of calm their bodies. They get more anxious and things like that. But yeah, the big one is that they have trouble like falling asleep. Um, how did I go through it? Um, well, like I said, I didn't know why I didn't like Christmas. I hated Christmas. I mean, as a special ed individual and special ed teacher myself, I do know what it takes in order to help a special ed individual, and that is structure. The more structure you have, the better off they are. So the problem with when individuals who are special ed leave schools for vacations and things like that, they leave their structured environment. Their structured environment that tells them when they need to be here and this. Especially like the children who are ADD, attention deficit disorder, if they could just know where they need to be at this point in time, and that's what the structure does. Okay, well, I have it ingrained in me. On Thursday, I do this. I go to gym, and that's my favorite thing to do. And then, all of a sudden Christmas comes around and your structure is gone and you sleep in later and, you know, you want to do things, but not necessarily that the people in your household can do things like, hey, let's go and do this. Well, then I'm gonna have to drive you and I can't right now. Okay, well, let's see, what else can I do? I don't know, and then you have to create your own happiness and create your own things that keep you busy. Obviously, that's where video games came into play, and video games, were a blessing for parents and also a curse. But, you can have a kid sit in front of video games for years, basically. I mean, I know I did it for, 2 days straight. You got to conquer it. You have to conquer that level. And if you don't, then you got to reset it. And then what? Or if you lucky enough, you can put it on pause. But back in the day, you couldn't do that. So yeah, it's something that everybody has to go through. So what can you do about it? Well, my mom used to pick me up, and before I could complain about anything, at before I could complain for, she'd pick me up, and it's before I could complain, I had to tell her one good thing. And my friends would be like, "Yeah, this is what Dan did," and then she'd look at me, she's like, "Hey, that's two." I'm like, "But wait, I didn't." Ugh. So I'd have to deal with telling her two good things that happened, and that seems easy for somebody, but not when you're in your depressive and negative mode, and all you want to just get out is just push all that negative out just to get it out. But I'd have to tell her two good things. So another thing I found is that somebody said that when whoever's in the car, whenever you hit a stoplight, everybody say one good thing you're thankful for. And just going around the horn, it's pretty easy when, oh, okay, well, they're doing it now. I can do that. I can say something I'm thankful for. The other thing I found out is from Tony Robbins. He said that you can't be grateful and angry or fearful at the same time. It's just, you can't. So you want to be grateful as much as you can. And then I've heard, we've all heard about a runner's high. So you get the endorphins by having a runner's high, but there actually is a giver's high. And you're thankful because you can give something. Believe it or not, I heard that from Tim Tebow. So yeah, the same kind of endorphins that you would get from running, you can get that from giving. I
Yeah,
hope I answered
it's
that.
it's really interesting. It's really interesting because I know in my life now gratitude plays a massive role, and it can instantly at times shift the entire direction and course of my day around, and put it in a more positive place, and allow me to get the work I want to get done, or do this thing, or have the motivation to do this, whatever the case is, and it shifts my mindset. I think it does. That
Mhm.
gratitude does that for everybody to some degree. It depends on the situation, but it can always help to some degree, even if it's smaller than you would like it to be at certain points of time. But yeah, that was when I was diagnosed with depression at 13. Just thinking anything could be good was very difficult to see, and
Yep.
it was really interesting because I always had this belief when I would what you said about going around the car and having the other people say what they're thankful for reminded me of something somewhat similar in my situation. Of just when I heard other people come up with some sort of creative thought, or someone would ask a question and it required you to use your brain to think about it, I always thought that like nothing ever came to me, and I thought to myself like, well, I just can't do this. I'm not a creative person. That's what I would tell myself all the time, and it was so frustrating because I would see other people and other kids be able to say things or answer certain questions, and I just felt completely stuck. And then, I'd feel shame around that. And for the longest time, I just told
Mhm.
myself I am not a creative person. And once I made changes in my life and I got out of that dark place, the creativity started to naturally come into my life. But when you're in that space, it's so difficult to see anything good because even the good things that are happening, because of the mindset you have and what you're in, you still think it's a bad thing. Or even if it's not a bad thing, it's something that can't be as good as everybody is painting it to be.
Right. That kind of goes along with when you are in this position, you feel guilty from having your thoughts, and then you're going to feel guilty for giving people that burden to talk about that. So that's why everybody pushes. That's the belief that, why you push people away. You're pushing people away because you don't want them to deal with your problems. You don't want to talk to somebody who's all having a good day like that. Just, you don't want to be around happiness. And that was, my problem with like Christmas. Like, hey, it's the greatest, and but not everybody goes through it. I mean, I faked it, I guess you can say, but and I liked getting the presents and everything, but and I liked being around the family, but it wasn't. I don't know. It's just kind of half joy, and then even sometimes for birthdays or stuff like that, you look at somebody, and there's always the point where you're just like, oh, somebody else has it better than me, and so you're looking at them and you're like, oh man, and then you feel kind of bad that way too.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you brought that up of how it's like you just don't want to be around happiness. You would think
Yep.
that you would want to since you feel so bad about yourself and that it would change something, but you really don't in that moment. And also going back to what you said earlier about some of the
Sam will relate to what
misconceptions
we're
and
talking about. There you go.
yeah, and people saying, uh, people talking about, why can't you just be happy? Like I'm happy. Everybody has such a different human experience in so many different ways. We're all completely unique individuals, and we often equate our thoughts or our situation or our mood or our feelings or our life experience right now to somebody else's. And we view life, we all have our different world perspectives based on all of our beliefs and experiences and past experiences and current ones in this moment and what we think will happen in the future. And sometimes we fail to recognize that it's like, oh, some other human could be having a different experience than me right now and might not view the world in the exact way that I view it. Right. And so that's where obviously communication comes into place of figuring out how to word things for specific individuals so that they can understand where you're coming from and like go to the level that they're at now. Because sometimes kind of just saying, I mean, especially when you're talking to someone that's in a dark place and all you say is my life, and all you hear when somebody says, I'm happy, why can't you be happy? All you hear is, well, yeah, they're happy and I'm not. Well, I don't know how to be happy. It's like, and then you just feel worse about yourself.
Hmm. Very true. So the reason I wrote this book is for a springboard for parents and children to actually talk about depression. That was the reason why I wrote it. It actually became something more to that when I added gratitude. But I do want to show you one picture that's probably one of my favorite ones here. Can you see that? Or wait.
Yes.
So there's Sam, and there he is, wishing he could go to another place. So he wishing he could go to a place that's warm, where he could be happy. And a lot of times in life, I felt that way as a child. I'm sure that was something that children would deal with. Like, you may not be able to talk about it necessarily, but you wish you could go to a place where you were happier. So he, in this book, in this page, he talks about he wishes he could go to another place, and they talk about when in America where we're having Christmas, and we're having the winter, Australia is having their summer. So he wishes he could go to Australia or vice versa, And so he wishes, and then at the very end, I say that, I bet there's another child in the world that wishes that they could go to a certain place during their sad too. But yeah, I do talk about gratitude, and gratitude is so powerful. And making a list of gratitude, and since I've been making a list of gratitude after I wrote the book, after I read like, oh, it was really powerful. When I was going through, getting out of my depression of 2 years of just kind of researching everything I possibly can, gratitude came up, and so I actually write down, try to do like 5 things of gratitude as much as I can, at least a day. And sometimes, you might get two, sometimes you might get three, but on a good day, you get five, like, oh yeah. So, somebody bought me dinner. I was able to buy dinner for somebody. I got an extra ride and made all green lights, and as far as a kid's concerned, well, I played with my friend. I was able to get to school early on. My locker opened that I needed to do. I don't know if they have lockers open, but like my locker opened when I needed to. I've gone through that many times. I remember praying. I'm like, I'm like, okay, well, I tried to lock so many times, and I'm like, okay, please open. If you do open for the next 3 weeks, I'll go to church. Click. I'm like, dang it. So I got home. I'm like, Mom, I got to go to church for 3 weeks. She's like, okay, we'll do it. I'm like, oh man. So yeah, you're thankful for all the things you possibly be thankful for. And if you do, like you said, if you look through the lens of negativity versus positivity, negative things are going to happen. And I look through the lens of negativity, and my life was horrible. Lots of things happened. And then I'm looking through the life of positivity, and I wrote a book, and I'm being interviewed by different people. And on my birthday, I'm being interviewed by the Mighty Brad.
Happy
So that's
birthday.
pretty cool. Thank you. Oh, I just want to show you my shirt, by the way, because I normally like show the shirt, and there you go. Why Sam's so sad, and then I had to flip around with the hat. But since I'm talking about happy stuff, we'll go with
Now we gotta switch it.
yeah. There we go.
That those different components of gratitude and that exercise of either writing or thinking about 5 different things or however many you can for that moment. I think I started to do something similarly, more of just thinking about the different things, and it depends on the day and what I have going on. And I think when people start to do that and try that out and experiment with it, they'll see the different things that they do become grateful for that have been in their life for so long they just weren't recognizing it. And it really depends on what it
Yep.
is, because some days the things that I feel like I'm grateful for is I got a lot of work done today. I was able to accomplish this. I made it here and did that, right? And those might be a little bit of bigger things, but there's also the smaller things too. Of today, this morning, I woke up and then went for a walk and had the thought of, wow, it's really sunny out today. It's warm. I'm sweating and I'm walking. And I thought to myself, I'm super grateful for the sun, and I'm super grateful to have 2 legs to be able to walk right now. And it's like, that's not a gratitude thought that I have every day, but it came to me because I was open. My mind was in a more positive state and open to thinking about what I could be grateful for. Therefore, the thoughts came in of something more positive. And it's like, that's what you get, what you put out consciously or unconsciously is what you get back. Like you were phrasing before, it's like when we're feeling so negative, it's like feels like so many more negative things are happening to us. And then on the flip side, when you feel more positive, it feels like so many more positive things happen. Or even if you are in a positive mood and those usual negative things happen to you, they usually don't affect you as much because you're in a more positive frame of mind. And
Agreed.
so those little shifts that we are not always but often in control of, they make the biggest difference in the world. I mean, it's like when we wake up and we're either in a positive or negative mood, we see how that severely affects our day. And then also the things that we can do to then put ourselves in that positive mood. Like we're talking about, gratitude is one of the easiest and best ways to do it. Doing one of your favorite hobbies could be drawing, could be writing, could be playing an instrument, could be playing a sport, could be doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think for every single human being on this planet, this is my opinion, some sort of everyone needs some sort of creative hobby. Doesn't matter what it is. It
Agreed.
doesn't have to be the same thing as I do. Could be something completely different, but something that works for you. Because I've found, at least in my experience, it's the greatest outlet that I could have ever imagined. For me, that's playing the drums. And a lot of people, come to me and they're like, "Oh, Brad, you play drums, so it's like when you're angry, I'm sure it's like you just bang them." And it's like sometimes, but I would say more times it's my outlet for the drums. Usually isn't when I'm angry, but it's just like a general frustration, or I'm feeling upset that day, or I'm just not, I'm feeling unmotivated. I'm just not feeling it, or whatever the case is. I go do that, play for 15 minutes. If I have time, maybe I'll play for an hour, and then after that, oh well, then now I'm in the mood to do that thing. Now I can do that. Now I feel a lot more productive. Now things are a lot better. And there's so many of those things that we can do to do that. And someone might say, well, it's like I don't have a creative hobby. It's like, yeah, it takes, depending on what it is, like an instrument is a skill that takes time to really hone in on and get better at. But even just that process of learning can be a very exciting time. I think as human beings, we enjoy learning. And I think it's oftentimes when we might say to ourselves, no, I don't enjoy learning. It's just because you're learning about something that you don't enjoy or don't find fulfilling or useful to yourself. But it's like when you consciously make an effort to research something that you're genuinely interested in, you'll suddenly be like, wow, I actually do learn. Like, for example, for me, for the longest time, in school, a lot of the times, they're like, you have to read this book and then we're going to do this writing assignment, this and that. I never enjoyed the books. So I equated that to I just hate reading. But then when I got a little bit older and I found interest in other areas and then started to pick up books in those niche down topics and subjects, I figured I figured out that I love reading and that I love learning new information, right? And so obviously with that, it's like based on my past experience, it made me make that generalization. And so what we have to think about for all of our personal lives is when we're making those generalizations of I don't like doing that thing or I can't do it, it's like really boiling it down and analyzing it and thinking about the practicality and the truthfulness of your thoughts. And just like we were talking about a lot earlier, it's like when those negative thoughts come in, genuinely ask yourself, analyze them, like how valid are these? You're not good enough. Am I like, or even better, I'm a bad person. It's like, what are you doing in your life that makes you such a bad person? Maybe there are things that you're doing, right? And so then maybe you'll analyze that and want to make some shifts. But a lot of the times, there's either nothing or it's just one mistake you made, and now you feel like you're such a horrible person for that. And what we don't understand oftentimes is that yes, you did make the mistake. Yes, you might have done that person wrong, but why are you obligated to be that same person and do that thing again? You're not. And we often think like we're just stuck in that. It's like, yeah, I did that. I'm a bad person. That's what I do in that situation. And we take on that victim mentality. It's like, yeah, that's just how I am.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what if you could make a shift in that? And it's like, yes, it takes a little bit of time, effort, and energy to look into what you could do to make those shifts, but they're all there possible. It's like someone with SAD can sit there, like we were talking about before, and say, I have SAD and I'm just, things are just going to suck every winter and I'm not going to get any work done. Everything's going to be horrible. List goes on. And then some of the techniques and tools and practices that you mentioned, it's like someone incorporating maybe just one of those could like make
Mhm.
the biggest difference in their life.
Yeah, just to talk about the negativity and to stop the negativity, and that's the main thing. Wow, you said a lot of things. One is you talked about people have it worse than you do. Shakespeare once said, I was sad and mad, something to that effect, because I had no shoes. Then I saw a man without no legs, and I stopped crying." It also takes 5 years to become an expert at something, and then all these people that are up and coming, they're like, you see this star that we nobody knew about. Well, that takes 10 years to create that person, and we don't see all the work that somebody did to become the star. We just see the tip of the iceberg. We don't see all the work that we did. And so we as individuals look at that person like, wow, they're really talented. They did all this other stuff. And the person will be like, no, I'm not talented. I just worked my butt off in order to get there. Like Steve Martin said, he's like, I'm not talented. I'm like, yeah, you are. You can do so much, like comedian, you can do play guitar and all this stuff. And but anyways, yeah, and then I think, yeah, just what you were saying, that it's that if you just believe in yourself, and like you said, the negativity, like that's the biggest thing. And so I know from when I did write the book and the dark place that I was in, I was staring at a wall for 14 hours. So if you can imagine somebody that deals with the sun, and the sun is their way of living, and their sun is their energy, which I talk about in the very first page. Hang on a second. Here we go. You see that? So there
Yep.
Sam is, and he's bright and vivid and happy, and his bar of batteries is really high, and then the other one is low. The bar of battery is really low, and he's gray and negative. And so that's the very first thing I talk about when I talk about, this is how I feel when I have sad, and this is feeling I feel when I don't have sad. So I got a job and I was working in a factory, and there's artificial, fluorescent lighting. Not even, I never got to see, when I first was there, it was during COVID. And the first 2 years, I didn't see the sun because I was working 14 hours a day. And that was 7 days a week. And so I was at work before the sun came up, and I was gone before the sun came down. Or, yeah, after the sun already came down. So those 2 years were rough, and I didn't have a purpose. And so I created the book. And the other thing that kept me going was that my best friend needed a kidney. So while I was creating the book, I was on a journey to help my best friend from junior high that I've known since seventh grade. He needed a kidney, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll do it. So I did a journey at different hospitals and all over, and all my sick days were spent trying to do whatever I could do to get my friend a kidney. So at that point, I did have a purpose. I did have a purpose with my book, and I did have a purpose by trying to get my friend a kidney. However, it's when in my low state, my thought is, I'm not going to need the kidney where I'm going. So sure, I'll give it to my friend. And that's not the best way to think about it, but that was the only way that I could. Kidney normally takes 6 months in order to go through the whole process. For me, it took a year and a half, and I wasn't even the one who gave him the kidney. He now has a kidney, and he's doing great. He needed a kidney and a pancreas at the end of it. So he had to get a pancreas from a cadaver. Somebody had to pass away in order to get that. And then he was able to get a kidney. But I have a feeling that I went on that journey to keep me busy. And whatever, how much we believe in religion, fate, whatever you want to go with, but I believe that I was on a path for that reason, as well as this crusade to talk about depression, and how the reason why I wrote the book is that it's a springboard for adults to talk to children about depression, because later on when they become teens, that's when all the vices come into play, and that's when they do all these, their hormones and everything go into play, and that's when depression is the worst. And if we can talk about things to deal with depression early on, then I think it'd be better. But I don't think we do talk about depression early on. And the other thing about this book is that, oh, there's the front. So the other thing about this book is that when I was researching, I didn't see any humans. I didn't see any humans for depression for kids. I saw inanimate objects, I saw animals, but I didn't see any humans. So how can they relate to a kid when it's not a kid dealing with depression? And I don't think people want to talk about depression. And that's the part that's frustrating. We go, oh, well, the person's a little sad and blah, blah, blah. But what sad leads to, if not diagnosed and if not dealt with, is severe depression. And severe depression is not, you know, severe depression is really hard, and that takes, years to deal with. And that is where you're going to definitely need counseling and things like that.
Yeah, I it's really interesting that we continually shy away from having those difficult conversations about mental health and about what we're going through. And I think
Hmm.
one of those biggest factors, as we were referring to before, is the lack of understanding around it. A lot of us have a little bit more of a closed mindset with experiences that other people are going through that we haven't gone through. And it was interesting because obviously, like I said before, I was diagnosed when I was 13 and dealt with it for a few years. And after I got out of it, I saw somebody else going through it. And one of my friends came to me one time and told me, well, he's rich. His family has a nice house, and they have this, and they have that. And he said, how could he be depressed? There's no how does it make any sense? And it occurred to me that we still are under the belief that there's material things that can severely satisfy or change our mental health when it doesn't, and I don't even know if it can. Maybe for certain people it can, but for the overall population, I really don't believe it does, and that's why our continual population and this obsession of buying more material and nice things to quench our thirst and for our soul
Hmm.
to finally feel content is a never-ending journey, and that's why corporate America and these advertisements keep getting everybody's because there's something wrong within, and they say there's something external that can solve that, so you get that external thing only to realize that it doesn't help, and then you seek something else external and it still continually doesn't work. And so I think all of our improvement, obviously there's physical things in this reality that can help the internal. I'm not saying that that's not an occurrence, but there's a lot of internal work that has to be done in order for the outside physical reality to get better. I mean, it's the our perception and feelings and what is going on internally is why we're viewing the world from a certain perspective or from a certain viewpoint. It's because of what's going on within us. And I think if we can shift that conversation to being a little bit more open about it, because also, what I also question? The people that say, I'm so happy, how can you not be happy? Are they really that happy? Because I'm not saying they're not, but I think every human being has their tough days and days where they don't feel like working or they just feel horrible for the day. And there's things that they're going through that they don't talk about with anybody for multiple reasons. And sometimes that reason can be, well, I'm not going to talk about this because I don't want somebody to misunderstand me or not understand or just not understand what I'm going through. And
Hmm.
then they do the same thing for somebody else when they might open up about something that they're going through, and then there's this disconnect, whereas if both parties opened up, then there would be understanding because this person is going through something and this other person is also going through something. We're all going through something. If we can center our conversations around that a little bit more, we then really start to realize that we are not the only person that deals with difficult things in life. And all of our perception of this person has it perfect and my life sucks is never true. Now, do other people have it better than you in certain areas? Like, absolutely. But for every person that has this area of life better than yours, there's an area of their life where you're doing better than them. And that's not to play a power game of I'm doing well, you're not, blah, blah, blah. It's we're both going through things always throughout life. It's just transitioning to different areas. If we can talk about that a little bit more, then we can actually understand each other and we can actually grow and make our relationships together better because it's no worse feeling than having somebody than feeling in any way, shape, or form that people just simply do not understand you.
Yeah, as a teacher, I knew I wanted to be a teacher when I was like second grade because I was already helping people like just in second grade alone. And then I've always had the empathy to work with others that are disadvantaged. I've always been in the hero status, like if there's or not the hero status, the underdog, and that's for special ed or whatever kind of disability or whatever, and so I've always been that way. And so this is just one more thing. They're talking about disabilities or depression or whatever. It's just helping the underdog out. And so I totally agree with you what you're saying. Tony Robbins said, he's like, you wouldn't believe the people that I deal with that you would think are incredibly positive, and yet they're not. And I have to, work with them. But from their persona, they're totally positive and everything, but they're empty inside. And then it also said that, I think it was Jim Rohn, not Jim Rome, but Jim Rohn. And he said that the most positive or the most successful thing you can do, or the most important thing you can do, is work on yourself. And so if you can work on yourself, everything else will get better. And so the very first thing before you even try to build a business or whatever, work on yourself, get yourself up there. And that's kind of where I went from. I'm like, oh, okay, well, and I was listening to him and other people. And as far as depression, World the World Health Organization has predicted that within the next 2 years, and this was in 2023, that depression will be the leading cause of disability globally. So
Wow.
definitely it's out there.
Yeah, yeah. I think if we can center our conversations more around all of this type of stuff, everything can get better for everyone. Because obviously, like you just said, it's one of the biggest things that a lot of people are dealing with, but a lot of people still feel like they can't talk about it. But then also, we don't realize that there's so many other people dealing with it, so we probably could talk about it with a lot of people.
Right.
Which it's just more conversations is what is going to lead our personal lives and the world to be that better place that we all deep down want it to be. Dan, thanks so much for coming on the show today. It's been an absolute blast.
It's been a pleasure. I like you and I have like the same wavelength, a lot of the same things, same beliefs. So it's definitely easier to talk with you. You're a great host. So it's been a pleasure to meet too. Can I just leave off how I would normally sign for anytime I signed a book? Sam and I wish you much happiness as you create your own list of daily gratitude. Sincerely, Dan Granger.
Where
All the
can
best.
people check out the book, your social media, anything that people can check out?
Yeah, so it's Dan dash or minus sign Granger.com or gmail.com. Sorry. Dan slash Granger gmail.com. That would be my website. And then you can get it at Barnes and Noble or Amazon. And I would love to have a review, whatever you can do. I would love to hear from you. There's a part in my website where you can comment. So, or if any of you want to wish me happy birthday, that's cool too.
Yes, absolutely. Happy birthday again, Dan. Thanks so much for
Thank you.
tuning in, guys. And we will catch you guys in the next one.